Robert, first off, I'm a huge fan of both films. I haven't read the books yet, but from the writer's point of view, what has it been like for you the last maybe 4 to 7 years, possibly? I'm guessing here, working with Jane Harper on the scripts, fleshing out the universe and committing it to cinema. What has been that key to that collaboration with Jane?
Oh, excellent question. Yeah, it's been wonderful. I mean, The Dry was an unexpected success for us. Like we made it thinking it might be okay, and then it was this huge success and traveled the world and the chance to get to make a sequel and to get to know Jane and to have her happy with the work we've been adapting and the freedom she gives us, to explore her work beyond the page and no, it's been great. She's good. She really, in terms of what the adaptation is, she really trusts me. But she's there if I want to have a chat with her and ask her any advice or ask her questions. And yeah, she's really been very, very generous in that regard. So no, I consider it a kind of career highlight.
For you personally, the passion behind following Falk's journey, is it because no matter what investigation he's on, the past is always going to be a big part of his life and how he attempts to move forward with that in each journey? Was that one of the elements that attracted you to this entire universe? Because it's something that I think we can all relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think cinema does that really well. I remember someone early in my career saying, that if you look at how much time every day we spend thinking about the past, the present, and the future, it's about a third each. We only spend about a third of our day in the moment. The rest of it's thinking about the past and what's going to happen in the future. And cinema does that really well. Like I think as a creative form, it shows the past, present, and can show the future too. I haven't done it in the Jane Harper films, but we've had other films I've worked on which have had flash forwards as well as flashbacks. But yeah, so I think it lends itself really well to that structural conceit, cinema. And that allows you to go psychologically into Falk and flesh out who Falk is, what he dreams about, what he thinks about, what he hopes for, and what's informed him from his past with those flashbacks.
I might be wrong here. This is just me as a cinephile, but for you as a cinephile, when I look at Eric Bana, I think of just some of the great actors from yesteryear who can just command a frame without saying too much because we as the audience can fill in the rest of the dialogue and the exposition. What is it like working with Eric? And do you feel the same way that he's one of those rare actors that can actually command that frame and actually live without words and bring life to things without all of this exposition? So either way, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think he's got that classic movie star quality. I think of the films I fell in love with, the kind of mid-career films of people like Paul Newman and Robert Redford and how much I loved, a film like The Verdict with Paul Newman later in his career. There's stories where I just went, I just kind of love the characterization, but the actors allowed you to piece it together and they didn't tell you everything. The performance didn't, the performances I love aren't demonstrative. They allow you to trust the psychology of the performance. So I think Eric does that wonderfully.
And how has that partnership been for these last two movies? What works between that bond between you as far as putting out two really excellent films together?
Oh, it's fun. We're friends. We share an office in Melbourne together. We hang out. So directing him's been a real joy. He listens, he offers advice. I have no ego. So if I'm struggling with a scene, there was a scene in The Dry, I just couldn't work out how to do it. And he said, let's just go for a walk. And we went for a walk and had a chat about it. And I said, I can't work out why I'm not making this work. And he came up with a few ideas and we solved it and the scene was better for it. So yeah, I think he's a terrific creative partner, really, is how I'd probably describe it.
So watching both, I watched both of, so I rewatched The Dry the other day.
Thank
So I
you.
watched it back to back, and
Okay,
I
okay.
think one of the things that's great is you develop a world and people you actually believe the characters and the actual universe within each world. And how, in layman's terms, what's the most important part about making things so believable for the audience for two different films, but you hit a home run for both films. What is there a key to that as opposed to making it seem artificial? You make it feel real. So.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's all about location. So taking the actors somewhere. So the Dry is like in the Mallee Wimmera area of Victoria in Australia, and it's about 4.5 hour drive out there, and we all stayed there and we filmed there, and in Force of Nature, it's all of these subtropical rainforests and national parks outside of Melbourne, and we took the crew there, we took everyone there. So I think once you get the authenticity of place, it's harder for the actors to fake it. If you're shooting on a soundstage, you've really got to really act it. But if you take those five amazing actresses out into the bush, and it's pouring rain, and you've had to walk and carry your gear in, and then you get the camera up and you start filming, you're already halfway there with that authenticity that you're talking about. And then it's
So
fun for the audience too, isn't it? Like here we have a chance for American audiences to see a film that transports them into the Australian bush.
So I actually, after watching Force of Nature, I biasly went to Amazon to check Jane Harper's books. I know there's one more Fox story. So me as a biased interviewer, I wanted to know if there is a possibility that Fox journey is not over as far as cinema goes. And I know that's a lot to put onto you because you've been working really hard the last 5, 7 years and doing these two things, and they should be singular things. But the fanboy in me has to ask you that question. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, we're just going to see how this one goes. And, we didn't really think about doing the sequel. And then this came along, and there may be in a bit of time. I mean, we always joke that, the first one's in drought-stricken area. The second one is remote, wintry, wet, rainforest. And the third one is in a wine region. It's too easy for us.
That's
The
that's amazing.
location's too pleasant.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, couple final questions. Robert, just we're of the same age, just growing up. Can you name a film that impacted you as a youth, which then inspired you to become a filmmaker? Obviously, we're of the same generation. Like Hitchcock and Orson Welles were very popular and influential for us. But what specific film really influenced you as a filmmaker to become a director?
Oh, look, it was the work of the Australian director Peter Weir, actually. When I was a kid, it was I think Gallipoli with Mel Gibson and Mark Lee, and then Picnic at Hanging Rock, and then his work, The Year of Living Dangerously. Watching his films, and it was this idea: what is he doing? Why is this filmmaker that I keep being drawn to? And his films were all very humanist dramas. I felt they were quite forensic about the way they put a microscope on the human condition and looked into who we were. And I mean, they were very significant films for me, actually. I remember as a kid, we all got bussed down to see Gallipoli. It had only just come out, and just going, wow, the emotional veracity and impact of that film. So I think, and then, it inspired me to think beyond genre. Like you think of Peter Weir's films, he's made films across lots of different genres, and so it made me think, why is he's not limited by genre, and yet there is a humanist sense of exploring who we are about these films. So yeah, I definitely think he was the filmmaker. I mean, I love Stanley. Yeah, it's interesting if I think about it. I kind of would then go to Kubrick and all of his films, of 2001, and then when I was a teenager, The Shining, and like I go through all of his films as well, in terms of another filmmaker that probably, impacted on me during
Yeah.
that, yeah, formative time. I'm 57 this year. I was born in 1967. So my influences were probably late 70s when I was like 12 then. And then of course Star Wars came along in 1977 and I was like 10 or something. And
Yeah.
my dad took me to see that and it was like, oh my God. So the epic nature of what it would be like to be in a cinema, which is why something like Force of Nature is shot on large format lenses with big orchestral score and, really trying to push to be the best version of that film you would see in a cinema.
Well, Robert, thank you so much for your time and about meeting your heroes. I'm sure you met Peter Weir along the way. I've interviewed him. He's such a nice guy. So that must make things mean a lot to you as well, because he's such a nice person as well as being a great filmmaker. So
That's right, a beautiful man. I'm glad to hear you've interviewed him. He's
yeah,
retired now.
yeah,
Just recently he retired. So whatever interview, you should really treasure that.
yeah.
That's one of the world's great filmmakers.
Robert, again, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated.
No problems. Lovely to chat.
All
Great.
right, take care.